At the time that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and President Lyndon Johnson had that particular conversation, Lyndon Johnson was inheriting a presidency, and that was at a time in our country where we truly needed rehabilitation, we truly needed help, we truly needed budgeting, kind of like the same sort of things that Donald Trump has created for our country now. And so I just want to play these things because you should know who you picked as your leader. You should know who is leading this country down the drain. And we should understand we need to unite to stop this, to stop him, and anyone ever in the future coming with motives as his. And so I want you to pay attention because the human ear is just something. Because sometimes we miss out because we're still talking and the other person is trying to ask us something, but one time we get there, we're answering another question. And in the conversation, it kind of happens between Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and President Johnson. And I just want to question what possibly Dr. King meant when he stated in regards to the family. President Johnson perhaps did not hear him. I don't want to believe that it was ignorance that made him avoid answering and then just answering how he wanted to. But in regards to the family, I sure will, President Johnson says. And call me when you're down here next time. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I certainly will, Mr. President. President Johnson, let's get together. And any suggestions you got, bring them in. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., fine. I certainly will do that. President Johnson, thank you so much. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., thank you for calling. So I'm just wondering, in regards to the family, is it something that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wanted to convey to President Johnson and they missed that moment?
Interest in your cooperation and your communication, and a good many people told me that they heard about your statement, I guess, on TV. Yes, that's right. I've been locked up in this office, and I haven't seen you, but I want to tell you how grateful I am and how worthy I'm going to try to be of all your hopes. Well, thank you very much. I'm so happy to hear that, and I knew that you had just that great spirit, and you have our support and backing. Well, we know what the period is. It's just an impossible period. We got a budget coming up that's got nothing to do with it. It's practically already made, and we got a civil rights bill, and it hasn't even passed the House, and it's November, and Hubert Humphrey told me yesterday everybody wanted to go home. We got a tax bill that they haven't touched. We just got to not let up on any of them and keep going, and I guess they'll say that I'm repudiated, but I'm going to ask the Congress Wednesday to just stay there, they pass them all. They won't do it, but we'll just keep them there next year till they do, and we just won't give up an inch. Well, this is mighty fine. I think it's so imperative. I think one of the great tributes that we can pay in memory of President Kennedy is to try to enact some of the great progressive policies that he sought to initiate. Well, I'm going to support them all, and you can count on that, and I'm going to do my best to get other men to do likewise, and I'll have to have y'all's help. I never needed more than I do now. Well, you know you have it, and just feel free to call on us for anything. Thank you so much, Mark. All right, call me when you I sure will. Call me when you're down here next time. I certainly will. But let's get together, and any suggestions you got, bring them in. Fine, I certainly will do that. Thank you so much.
That's a conversation between the Honorable President Lyndon Johnson that had to take over when our beloved Prince President of this country, John F. Kennedy, was assassinated by a terrorist. This conversation was on November 25th, 1963. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I'm not that good with the military timing, but 11:20. I am not certain if it was in the day or evening. Donald disrespecting, degrading women.
She's still very. I moved on her actually. She was down in Palm Beach. I moved on her, and I failed. I'll admit it. Whoa. I did try and fuck her. She was married. No, Nancy. No, this was, and I moved on her very heavily. In fact, I took her out furniture shopping. She wanted to get some furniture. I said, "I'll show you where they have some nice furniture." I took out furniture. I moved on her like a bitch, but I couldn't get there, and she was married. And all of a sudden, I see her. She's now got the big phony tits and everything. She's totally changed her look.
Your girl's hot as shit. They're gonna purple.
stand for the president of the bloc. You are. Very rich, successful woman. She's a rich, successful. Where is Reince Priebus, the legendary Reince? Come here, Reince. Come here, Reince. Come over here. These members are loaded, Reince. Don't listen. He will work the rope for campaign contributions.
Well, now we know why we picked him.
He just got named
Work
by
the
Fox
campaign
and
funds.
everybody else as the power player of the month. I said, what about me? I won the election. So say a few words, Ron. All right, well, let's hear it for the president of the now, Sean. You guys did this great. And David, we spent time out here on debate prep and enjoying the club, but it's just an honor to be here with the next president and the things that he's going to do to make this country great again. Get up here, Jared, get over here, Jared. Interest in your cooperation and your communication, and a good many people told me that they heard about your statement, I guess, on TV. Yes, that's right. I've been locked up in this office, and I haven't seen you, but I want to tell you how grateful I am and how worthy I'm going to try to be of all your hopes. Well, thank you very much. I'm so happy to hear that, and I knew that you had just that great spirit, and you know you have our support and backing. Well, we know what this is. It's an impossible period. We got a budget coming up that's got nothing to do with it. It's practically already made, and we got a civil rights bill and hasn't even passed the House, and it's November, and Hubert Humphrey told me yesterday everybody wanted to go home. We've got a tax bill that they haven't touched. We just got to not let up on any of them and keep going, and I guess they'll say that I'm repudiated, but I'm going to ask the Congress Wednesday to just stay there, they pass them all. They won't do it, but we'll just keep them right next year till they do, and we just won't give up an inch. Well, this is mighty fine. I think it's so imperative. I think one of the great tributes that we can pay a memory of President Kennedy is to try to enact some of the great progressive policies that he sought to initiate. Well, I'm going to support them all, and you can count on that, and I'm going to do my best to get other men to do likewise, and I'll have to have y'all's help. I never needed more than I do now. Well, you know you have it, and just feel free to call on us for anything. Thank you so much, Mark. All right, call me when you come. I sure will. Call me when you're down here next time. I certainly will. But let's get together, and any suggestions you got, bring them in. Fine, I certainly will do that. Thank you so much.
That's a conversation between the Honorable President Lyndon Johnson that had to take over when our beloved Prince President of this country, John F. Kennedy, was assassinated by terrorists. This conversation was on November 25th, 1963. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I'm not that good with the military timing, but 11:20.
President Trump invites Comey to his office and asks him to drop his investigation into Michael Flynn. He's a good guy, Trump says. I hope you can let this go. It's Wednesday, May 17th.
Cover up. That's the wording there.
Tell us the story of what happened on February 14th.
On February 14th, Jim Comey went to the White House for a regular national security briefing with other intelligence and law enforcement officials.
Michael Schmidt broke this story on Tuesday afternoon.
He was in the Oval Office with them for some time, and then at the end of it, Attorney General Sessions and Vice President Pence, along with the president, were still around. The president kicked Pence and Sessions out. Sessions actually lingered again, and Trump dismissed him.
He said, please leave.
Correct. And he said, I just want to talk to Jim. And they had a one-on-one conversation. The president sat at the Resolute desk. On the other side, Comey sat in a chair. And the president started by talking about leaks and his concerns about leaks. He brought up the fact that he thought Comey should try and put reporters in jail.
Put reporters in prison.
Correct. He said, look, we used to put reporters in prison 10 to 15
That man
years
is just
ago,
an abuse of
that
power, abuse
And
of
then Trump turned
authority,
the
a
conversation towards Mike
nationalist,
Flynn.
authoritarian,
news.
Racist.
And this is big breaking news.
Really?
Michael Flynn
The private talks they have.
has resigned.
Those are my highest
Top member of the
concern of
president's next
security
team is under
alert.
investigation this morning for his contact with Russia, and who had been under an FBI investigation for his contacts with a Russian ambassador.
He discussed U.S. sanctions with a Russian ambassador before President Trump took office.
And what happened is Trump said, look, Mike Flynn is a good guy, and I just want to read the direct quote, which is, I hope you can let this go. I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go.
And what is the this in that sentence?
This is the federal investigation into Flynn and his contacts with Russian officials, including the Russian ambassador, during the transition, and whether Flynn had lied to the FBI about it.
This is the president asking the director of the FBI, just want to be really clear about this, to do exactly what, or not to do exactly what.
I hope you can let this go. Mike, and he tells him Mike Flynn had done nothing wrong, and Mike Flynn was a good guy.
Mike, how do you know all this, as best you're allowed and capable of saying?
I had found out a few days ago that Comey had written extensive memos based on every conversation, every phone call, every meeting that he had with Mr. Trump.
Anyone should,
Because Comey
working
was
with a public
concerned about
official,
Trump. He thought
that's questionable,
that Trump was going to jeopardize
to
the independence
protect
of the investigation.
themselves from
and the independence of
misrepresentation
the
and
FBI.
defamation,
And Comey,
or
who
even
was known
criminal
as a
allegations.
note-taker, knew to build a written record, and that is what he did. So I learned about these memos, and I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting, and I was moving towards trying to do a story on that.
Just the existence of them.
Correct. That would have been a pretty big story, that Comey had memos that backed up his interactions with Trump.
That he keeps a paper trail.
Correct. But as I pushed on that today, I got many, many more details about this meeting and about these real issues that it created for Comey and the FBI.
Is everything you've just described to me something that James Comey memorialized in a memo?
Correct. James Comey, he walked out of that meeting in the Oval Office. He knew that something had gone on that he did not think was right, and he went back and wrote a very, very detailed 2-page memo that laid out everything that happened up to, during, and after that meeting.
Did he write it the same day, immediately?
I believe so. I believe every memo that he wrote was contemporaneous to when it happened. Did he write it 15 minutes after he left the White House, or a day later? I don't know, but I know that the FBI is in possession of his contemporaneous memos on these.
They have now been left behind, even though he has been fired. They're in the hands of people in the Bureau.
Correct, and they can be subpoenaed by Congress, and Congress can haul Comey up there and ask him under oath in public. What happened between him and the president?
Mike, how much of the memo in question, or memos in question, have you seen or somehow become aware of?
We have not seen the memo. We have been read parts of it and talked to folks who have seen it.
So someone with a copy of the memo in front of them literally read parts of it to you?
Correct. That is how we learned the key details that were in it.
What did Comey say in response to President Trump in the moment, according to the memo?
Comey did not say, I'm going to end that investigation or I'm going to go forward with it. In response, he said yes, because the president had said Mike Flynn's a good guy. And Comey said, yes, Mike Flynn is a good guy. And that was it.
Interesting that he also documented his own casual response to that.
Correct. And that response could be seen perhaps as inappropriate in the sense that maybe the FBI director shouldn't be weighing in whether the guy that's under investigation is a good guy or not. My guess is that Comey's just sitting there trying to figure out what to say and what he can't say that would go along with what the president wanted.
So to be clear, do we have any reason to believe that James Comey acted on the president's request in any way?
No. The federal investigation of Mike Flynn went forward. In fact, Comey was concerned about the impact of this and kept it secret to him and just his close aides. He did not want the agents working on the investigation of Flynn to know this because he did not want them to be impacted by what the president wanted.
So he told very few people, and definitely not anyone involved in investigating potential Trump ties to Russia.
The senior FBI officials did not want the line agents to know what the president wanted.
It's fascinating. So, Mike, what does this request ultimately
That's
represent?
crazy.
The President of the United States asking something like that of the Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
This is the most significant evidence to date of the president's efforts to try and influence this incredibly politically sensitive investigation into ties between his associates and Russia.
And what is another
What was
reason
the
for
White
a
House's
person to want
response
to do
as you
something
began
like that?
to
Because
put
they have
this story
everything
together?
to lose. They
I'm
have
kind of interested in
something
how
to
that
do
played
with
out.
it.
We went to them
course they're
with
gonna cover it
our
up.
account of what happened and what we knew, and they came back to us after some time with a written statement in which they said that Trump had not asked this of Comey.
Last week, you broke another huge story about Trump and Comey, that they had met shortly after the election and that Trump had asked Comey basically for a pledge of loyalty. The White House said that didn't happen, and we asked you if you believed it, and you said, yeah, I only put things in the paper that I believe happened. I want to take that a step further. What does it take to be able to put something like this, of this enormity, in the paper?
I think what made us feel comfortable about this was the specificity that we had and the folks that we talked to that had seen these memos and the detailed nature of what Comey wrote.
We've heard that Comey is almost universally admired inside the FBI. And now, thanks to you and your reporting, everyone inside the FBI is aware that the president asked James Comey essentially not to do his job. What do you think the reaction will be to that?
Regardless of what FBI agents think about the decision Comey made on the email investigation, they took a lot of pride in the fact that he was independent. And I think they take a lot of pride in the fact that they're trying to conduct an investigation in such a politically difficult time. And the idea that Comey stared down the president
cultural
wouldn't
behavior
go along with his idea to kill the Flynn investigation, created a paper trail that would allow the truth to come out. I can only imagine it will win over more FBI agents.
Win over more FBI agents to Comey. So are we looking at potentially a very unprecedentedly hostile relationship between the White House and the investigatory arms of the U.S. government? You cover a lot of these agencies.
I think that we already are at that stage. It's basically now known that the president tried to influence this investigation. And the question will be, does a special prosecutor get appointed that would essentially insulate that investigation?
This man has been connected
I wonder
to
if the qualities that
schemes,
have defined Comey throughout this investigation,
fraud, criminality since 1987. This Donald Trump. And has yet to have been convicted or tried.
all coming back?
That is white entitlement at its finest for an immigrant.
That's what I'm saying. So if they know that he did this, why they didn't bring him up on charges?
Exactly.
I think that if there's nothing to the Russia
so
stuff
good at being
and
a
to
fraud
the
to his
accusations
own,
about ties between his
manipulating them,
and
even what
Russia
they
and any
even what they know.
election,
It's just
President
ridiculous to
has
watch.
done
It's ridiculous to
a
be
very good job at
affected
creating
by
the appearance
it.
that there's
I can see if we were unbothered by it, but you people went a little too far.
On Tuesday night,
another deeply troubling allegation. Congress
Deeply
needs
troubling.
to bring Director Comey back to testify. We need to get those notes if they exist.
Very distasteful characteristic
Obstruction of justice.
of human
That
being.
is the fundamental question here. Is anyone, including the President of the United States, above the law?
members
No,
of Congress said they wanted
absolutely
James
not.
Comey to testify.
No
as soon
one
as
can be
possible.
above the law.
This isn't good
It
for
does
our
not
country.
send the right
So
message.
that's why the important
That
thing
means
now
anyone
is
can
to get to the bottom of
overpower
everything,
to
find the
overrule
truth, no matter
democracy.
where it may lead us. And
Republican
We
Congressman
can't
Jason
act like
Tate,
we can't act
chairman
like
of the
we
House
living in
Oversight
that if that's not really
said he
how it
wanted to
goes.
see Comey's memo
Well,
about
so let everybody be out there free in the
sooner
field.
rather than later. I have my subpoena
Teach me
pen
what to
ready,
say.
Chapin said. We'll be right back.
They like the structure because they get to capitalize off the structure.
Yeah, and that's why they made that rule. No citizen can overthrow the government.
Mornings can
Yeah,
be
but
a
isn't that what's
handful.
taking place?
Between the eye rubbing
He
and
has
head
actually
making,
overthrown the
bathing
government.
and brushing,
He has
there's
compromised the
very little time
entire
for tapping, scrolling,
white
and searching.
American law
That's where
and
Google Home
democracy.
can help.
The United
Just
States
say,
Constitution.
Hey Google, tell me about
There
my
is no
day.
need
And the
for
Google Assistant
paying
will tell you about your
taxes
first meeting, how
or
long
a
it'll take to get
government
to work,
if in fact they're not going to do what they need to do right by the people for climate change,
like only Google can.
health care, and human services. There's no other need
If these allegations, Senator, are true,
for such a system that wastes so much time and money. All it does is give outlets to the government to be able to funnel money from people they otherwise would not have access to or relationships with. That is capitalism. It's no different than being the only one who offers a service in an area and there is something there everyone needs.
3 or 4 months.
Your consumer base is already set for you. It's not really like the consumers even have an option because they can only go to you. That's capitalism. That's what they're doing at Niagara Mohawk when they changed their name to National Grid. That's what they're pulling the scheme now with Spectrum, charging people for colored programming, black,
Start with a really simple question.
Puerto Rican Indian TV.
What is obstruction of justice?
This has been going on for a long time. That is obstruction of justice.
Make it a crime
Because it's a deprivation.
Obstruct, influence, or impede
Yeah.
any kind of official proceeding or investigation. So there are laws written in very general terms that make it a crime to interfere with an investigation.
Adam Liptak covers the
It is
law
a crime
times.
to
Adam, how
interfere
hard is it
in an
to
investigation.
prove
Anybody in
obstruction of
hood
justice?
know
What are
that.
the basic
How
legal
is it this white man y'all elected
Well, the key thing
is
is
unaware
you do
of the
have to
laws
prove that
from which
someone
he should
had
be
state of
the
mind.
supreme
Had the
ruler
intent
of?
to
Okay? You should be the
interfere with an
best role
investigation,
model
obstruct justice,
of these
and not
laws.
have it to be the incidental consequence of something they were doing for some other reason.
It's a fraud.
And, you know, we're talking around this, but the question is proving Donald Trump's state of mind may be a challenging thing.
You mentioned intent. A recurring
Social
question
pathology.
with this president is whether he's somebody who doesn't always understand the importance and the implications of his own words.
And is that
Could that
acceptable
factor
for a president? It's acceptable for an entrepreneur, a businessman, a developer, a management person selling his mouth game to people to invest in him. He's good at rallies. He's good at hate crimes. He's good at that.
Did he, in speaking to Director Comey
Natural
and then
partisan.
firing Director Comey, mean
He's gonna try to bully the
to
FBI
frustrate
and
a federal
Amy and
investigation?
everybody
Let's talk about the particulars
who
of
does not
this
go to your
situation
side.
that our
If
colleague
you don't want
Mike
no
Schmidt
freedom
has
of
just
thought,
been reporting.
that's exactly what that
And
is.
he was just on
You are
describing
trying to
this
prevent
memo
people
that
from
James
having the
Comey
freedom of
wrote
thought.
that recalled
That's worse than the
according to
freedom of
him, the
expression.
president asking him to shut down the Bureau's investigation into Michael Flynn. It
It's a
felt
hostage
like a
takeover
pretty
by a president of the
explicit
country.
request from the president.
Who can who's going to challenge that authority
That's
unless you're
justice.
really mentally ill? You
He's
just
just
don't give a
he's
fuck.
The
just a
statutes
gangster.
are written in general terms, and you could certainly
He's throwing
imagine
his
someone
power
making the
around.
case. But as a theoretical law school hypothetical, we're in the zone.
Adam, are memos evidence? It seems like there's still basically one person's account of something. So how credible is something like that legally?
Well, they would corroborate actual testimony from Director Comey, and having contemporaneously written down and shared with people what happened is pretty powerful evidence, even putting aside that his testimony might well be found
This man has
credible even
managed to
without
do
such a
10
memo.
months
Adam, you said
of
this
no
could
work,
be difficult to prove based
of
on the
undoing,
question
of
intent.
racism, of
Is there
rallying,
any evidence of
fundraising,
intent?
If it was the case, as I think Mike Schmidt reported,
funding
that
war
Donald
for
Trump
terror.
asked everyone to leave except for Director Comey, asked the Vice President to leave, asked the Attorney General to leave, and
He
then
is not
made this
interested in the
request.
balance of
That
power.
seems to be some evidence of a guilty conscience.
And is it harder to
Interested
prove
in his way.
the idea of obstruction of justice when you're talking about the President of the United States?
I don't know that it's harder to prove. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to prove it to the satisfaction of a jury that will take into account all kinds of things, including the fact that it's the president, the fact that it's this president, all of the information that has come to light, probably a lot more that seems to be coming to light by the day. So you would try to show to a jury, to prove every way you can, that these actions happened and were undertaken with the purpose of interfering with an investigation.
Adam, what are the paths by which a case like this might move into the legal realm in the coming weeks? What would that look like?
In the coming weeks, I find it hard to imagine that anything would move that quickly. But this is a very fast-moving, volatile situation. There are two basic paths. One is the criminal law and a prosecution, and the other is impeachment. And in the criminal law, we've talked a bit about what a prosecutor would have to prove. In impeachment proceedings, it's much more loosey-goosey. It's really up to the sense of the House and Senate what constitutes an impeachable offense. But in earlier impeachment proceedings and run-ups to them, things in this general zone have been the sorts of things Congress seemed prepared to pursue. You know, I guess the real answer is this. In a counterfactual world where the president didn't control the Justice Department and the Republicans didn't control Congress, it wouldn't surprise me at all if, say, counterfactually, you had a Democratic-controlled House, that they might think this is an impeachable offense if proven.
Adam, thank you very much as always. I really appreciate it.
Hey, great to be here.
Finally, on yesterday's show, we reported that President Trump had shared highly classified information about an ISIS terror plot with two senior officials from the Russian government last week. The information had been given to the White House by an unnamed ally in the Middle East on the condition that it be kept confidential. On Tuesday, my colleague Adam Goldman reported who that ally was.
The ally is Israel, which is a major collector of intelligence in the region and is obviously a close partner in the war on terror.
Federal officials had first asked the Times and other news organizations not to report the identity of the ally. By Tuesday, the Times had decided to do so.
And I can't disclose our conversations today, but you can obviously imagine we would have reached out to all the appropriate authorities for running the story. I mean, I can say this. The bar for the government is very high, and our default position is to publish. So you have to provide a credible reason for not publishing this information. You know, revealing Israel's name didn't rise to that level.
Adam, give us some context for how and why this classified information came to be gathered by Israel and then shared with the White House.
Here's the thing. Israel provided us with sensitive information about an ongoing terrorism threat out of Syria. We took that information and we provided it to the Russians, right? Russia is arguably a hostile nation to us. They tried to interfere in our presidential election. There is a good chance Russia could have turned around and supplied that to Iran, right? Iran is the main enemy of Israel. It's the greatest threat to Israel's existence in the Middle East. What is the upside of Israel agreeing to share information with the Russians?
He all right?
Right, and it sounds like they never had agreed to do that. It just happened somewhat accidentally via President Trump.
If there's an agreement and they gave explicit permission to the Americans to do that, they have not come out, the administration has not come out and said that publicly.
That's it for the Daily. I'm Michael Barbaro.
Too much. They are too much, right?
He made a triangle out of that shit. Israel, Russia, and allegedly Iran.
And it makes sense because he has interest there.
Like, does she always wear like mini skirts and stuff?
She wears, yeah. Well, she's a pretty conservative person, but she will wear pretty wild clothing.
And can you go to like do you go to like regular restaurants and stuff with her?
Yes.
And then like you walk in and you sit at a table.
Right.
And does she ever not like wear panties? And then like you're sitting. Shh, please, Robin. I have to ask these questions.
Howard, you're talking about a potential first lady. This is not appropriate.
Yeah, but forget that. Please, you gotta help me out with this. I gotta know because I have no life. Let me ask you something. You're telling me she sits there with no panties, and then like does she ever like put her foot in your crotch? Go ahead. Answer.
Well, I'll say this: we get along very well.
Oh.
We get along very, very well.
Have you ever felt her up in public? He has, I know.
Mentally?
No,
mentally? No, I'm very well behaved, actually, in almost all ways. I'm very down the middle.
What was that? It was sticking to something.
Yeah, it's running low the lowest time.
Play a portion of the tape for it.
John Miller. What is your position? Well, I'm sort of handling PR because he gets so much of it.
Him possibly pretending to be himself. It's just like him.
We need some movement.
Did you know you have a constitutionally protected right to a climate system capable of sustaining human life? What you do, and it's thanks to 21 young people from around the country who are suing the Trump administration and the entire fossil fuel industry.
They know how to set their children's futures up, don't they?
The lifestyle that I know, the lifestyle that I've grown up with, is going to be completely altered. The government has had knowledge of climate change, its implications, and the danger it poses to our future, my generation's future, and they've known this for the last 65 plus years. They've deliberately ignored the science of their own scientists that have been telling them that human carbon emissions are contributing to this.
We are out of time now. We have, in a sense, been procrastinating on solving this climate issue, and now the paper is due in the next 4 hours.
I rode all the way here on the bus from New York because I'm angry.
Marching! Marching! Marching!
The government cannot take away your life, liberty, or property. And that's really the foundation of the case.
What do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? 10 years ago!
That's not going to stand anymore, and we're willing to take our future into our own hands.
When we out there protesting, we're fucking crying. And they find it to be true.
Really loudly. It was amazing how many
It's amazing.
Science.
I was just looking at it and I was just thinking, man, I really hope you're watching this from, like, it's time.
Lawyers and judges and teachers and whomever is pushing them to push that wallet to advance them in their futures.
We took legendary and made it liberating.
Inherent greed.
Play as skillfully as it can what I would call a game of nations. It's a triangular game. The first round of that play was between President Trump and President Xi Jinping. What's interesting about this meeting is that by the White House and Chinese design, it was an attempt for the two to
China
get to
trademark.
each other, explore each other's
Trump
personalities.
Corporation, America, pay
Interestingly,
attention.
in the days since the summit, the Chinese have, to an unusual extent, sided with the United States, trying to work with the U.S. to deal with the North Korea. The North Korea said, if you don't work with us to stop this North Korean threat, the U.S. will do it unilaterally. And so that part of the triangular game, I would say, is very much going Trump's way. He has a new partnership with Xi of China. It's the opposite of what we thought would happen. The third leg of this triangle is Russia. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who knows Russia well, was in Moscow. The Russians played a little game of surprise about whether he would meet with President Vladimir Putin. In the end, he did. And it's obvious that they are talking about some way to cooperate. The U.S. has said as clearly as it can, stable Syria is impossible if Bashar al-Assad remains president. As I look at this, I see something that's familiar to me, and that is a process best explained really by Henry Kissinger, who was National Security Advisor to President Nixon and then Secretary of State. And that is the idea that the U.S. will seek to play off China and Russia, two big powers that are potential, sometimes actual adversaries. The U.S. will seek to gain leverage in the middle so that it's able to negotiate to its advantage. You have to say right now that the U.S. seems to have more leverage, more ability to bargain, better ability to seek outcomes in its interest than you would have thought possible a few months ago.
Business moves, a business interests, and motives. This is certainly a man that has been put in position to do exactly what he's doing, because he even has motives with these foreign allies, and not just one, but more than one.
To change course.
And he's doing it as they've always done things. Manipulatively, strategically, systematically.
But how will I survive in this budget?
With the people's
I'm
money.
just a little baby.
without their knowledge or permission.
But that's because it's soft and weak.
Stripping us of our property, life, and liberty.
By 29%, strong. Getting rid of qualified public
Give themselves some type of immortality or something.
More guns,
Living immortal.
Secret contact, conflicting stories, mounting signs of hidden ties and shady deals. Fear our president is compromised.
He is
Of liberty, justice, and honor.
ignorant. He isn't.
Fought for freedom, and presidents of both parties stood against foreign tyrants.
Freedom is human rights. A man cannot give to another man. It's God-given. Laws are man-given.
Theatrically speaking. He's the master of these detours and distractions that turn the public's attention from perhaps a misstep in the way to someone else's problem. Donald Trump's hour and 20-minute news conference where he spouted a number of false facts.
I guess it was the biggest electoral college win since Ronald Reagan took off on the news media.
I do. Let me tell you what. Wait. He was really continuing a career-long pattern. He takes advantage even of rough news, of difficult news. The collapse of his marriage, for example, out there as part of the Trump show. And this was not something that was done in spite of Donald Trump. This was something that he was actively involved with. And so this is part of that yin-yang relationship that he's had with the news media for decades. And we're seeing that now in the early days of this administration. Why he's so effective at it is because his manner is so casual and so his language is so everyday.
We're getting really bad dudes out of this country.
This is something that people talk about all the time. How he talks just like we do. He really puts great premium on seeming to be authentic.
Unfortunately, the budget that we're inheriting, essentially inheriting, is a mess.
It's perfectly human, and it's natural for politicians to take credit for the good stuff and blame others for the bad stuff.
I've only been here for 4 weeks, so I can't take too much of the blame for what's happening.
But in Donald Trump's case, we see something different. We see an emphasis on the presidency as the persona of Donald Trump. He's not only shifting blame for things that go wrong to the news media and outside forces, but also he has a long history through his career of blaming his own executives and jettisoning those who he believes have been responsible for failure. Donald Trump is about presenting himself as a symbol of strength,
greatness, thought,
as moving things along at a quick,
he's worthless.
pace.
He's a fraud. He's a criminal con artist. He's done through his whole life doing that. A lot of it.
This is very consistent with his entire career. He's never paid as much attention to which particular business he's promoting, but rather to enhancing the personal brand of Donald Trump. He's all about telling people
fake created corporations, development, management companies.
Building that image of action.
Those aren't nothing they contribute. You know what I'm saying? I'll build some buildings from loan and funded money. You'll build nice looking, beautiful buildings and rent them out lavishly to expensive people. They contribute to helping nobody poor, middle class, needed. He has never contributed to anybody.
The twists and turns of his life and to enhance his brand in such a way.
He has no desire. He just wants to seek the government, seek the people's money. He's so fucking narcissistic he don't even realize what he's doing. His parents ain't never told him that.
Warranty on your certified pre-owned Mercedes-Benz. You can drive as far as you want.
Up until last week, I was an analyst with the CIA. I held different positions with the agency, most recently as the spokesperson for the National Security Council. Obviously, I can't speak for the entire Central Intelligence Agency workforce. I do keep in touch with some of them, and I can say that there is a strong feeling of demoralization. One of the culminating events was President Trump's visit to CIA headquarters on his first full day in office.
I am so behind you, and I know maybe sometimes you haven't gotten the backing that you wanted, and you're going to get so much backing.
It turned into a campaign-style event.
The reason you're my first stop is that, as you know, I have a running
He is a rallier, always for
They are
money.
among the most dishonest human beings.
Always talking like a
With the president
salesman's
standing
pitch
before,
title. Selling
I'm
a car
aware
or some
to
shit.
CIA's fallen officers going back into campaign.
The kind you can't walk
And I
away
think
from.
for many officers of the CIA, certainly myself included, that was a truly demoralizing moment, and certainly one that I never expected to see. Well, I wouldn't argue with the notion that every president brings his own people with him. That is a prerogative of the president of the United States. What I think is different and unique about this president and his team is the unwillingness of those new members,
None of them
many
are very
who have
experienced.
little or no
They're
experience
pretty
in foreign
much
policy,
nobodies.
their inclination to tune out the intelligence
No one
analysis
ever
that has
would
been presented by
even get in
them
the
by
position.
career professionals who worked both for Republicans and for Democrats. I worked proudly under President George W. Bush. I worked proudly under President Barack Obama. I saw how both administrations under which I've worked have valued that input from the intelligence agency. Granted, it's not the only input. Both of them showed, I think, healthy skepticism, but they certainly welcomed that as one input into the process. It's absolutely healthy to be skeptical of not only the intelligence community, but of all voices that are around the table. And that's exactly why there is a round table in the situation.
That's right.
Principals from various departments and agencies, from the Department of State, Department of Defense, from various entities of the intelligence community, military, and others sit around a table and debate policy options. And CIA and the broader intelligence community typically withdraw when it comes to policy discussions. They present the options, they present the intelligence, they occasionally present a recommendation, but then it's really a policy discussion. And so certainly we have seen the CIA and the intelligence community err in the past. I think the most notorious example of that, one that President Trump himself has raised, is the 2002 assessment of Iraq's WME. The CIA intelligence community has held itself to account. But that's not to say it's infallible. That's not to say that future mistakes won't be made. The intelligence community goes to great lengths to ensure that its analysis is unbiased, it's candid, and it calls it like it sees it. If this administration decides to go alone and to say, with intelligence be damned, I think there's a real consequence for escalation on any number of fronts. An escalation that has the potential to put lives at risk.
You are working for millions of people in their public interest means their interest, not your interest. When I think what I want. No, he didn't. Actually, I believe he strategically picked people who purposefully had something against each agency that he actually put them in. Really, each of them. You want to put a person in the head of agriculture and food that has no experience with it, that has a bias toward a nation of people. You want to put another person in there, that Bang guy. He's a racist. He has a bias toward a nation of people, nations of people, because racist people have bias toward even their own. Okay? They don't have a regard for humanity. They're just savages. I don't know what's wrong with them to see themselves.
And they don't fit into their class. That's what they go by. That's what he go by.
That's right.
He go by class.
Yeah, whoever fits in was him.
Yep, his class.
But he doesn't know his whole. He's a fraud of his class. You have before your way here. If people really knew who you were and that you're not really entitled to these 500 companies, honestly, how are you effectively managing and running over 500 companies in different parts of the world, and probably like supposedly over 200 and something companies in New York State? Where are each of those tax records for each of those individual 500 companies? Because they should have been tax filings for each one of those companies are responsible for reporting for their taxes, whether they make money or not. Unless you dissolve it. But if you're going to put it on a financial disclosure that you make accessible to this country for you to get the role of presidency, you know it's only white entitlement that got him in there, nothing else. Intellect did not get him in there. Expertise did not get him in there. But political education did not get him there. Neither of that. The only thing that got him there was a rally of a nation of hate. That's what got him there. And they funded it because they were so upset that a black man was in that office.
That, and he said that he was going to make the United States money.
And white people like to believe that. They just don't understand. If we're going to make money, we're going to be able to make that money anyway. And if he ever had any intentions on people making money, he has over 500 businesses all over the world. Why don't he do internships for children, students, and poor communities? It's a con. Because it's a con. You would be Mr. New York if that was the case.
That's why he went bankrupt so many times.
Because he's a fraud.
He used other people's money. He got them to give him money. You know what I'm saying? He couldn't deliver what he was saying that he was.
But he always managed to cover it up. To maintain what he wanted and needed for himself. And then enough for him to still look like he's maintaining his business structures so that he can resurrect himself again, because it will look good to a nobody or a person who's not that intellectual and believing in him. And he thrives off of people inability to know better than him. And now they want the rest of us to suffer. And our lives to fall apart at the expense of him. Very broad-minded people. No health insurance, but everyone's responsible and can be penalized for not having health insurance. So you induce circumstances for people when you know in a couple of months you're going to be requesting something that people, it really makes no sense. Do you understand? How did you just made this law. And now you're just going to contradict how do you go change all the paper, how do you go make notice to all the taxpayers. And where's all the taxpayers' money from last tax season? Because ever since Trump has been here, everyone, every program, every service in our country, our United States Justice Department is completely compromised. It is a Ku Klux Klan meeting place. I want my money back from each of those fucks. I don't believe they have a right to extort us when they and their families are indebted to us for eternity. When you owe people over 400 years worth of work, you should never, ever in your life step out of line or try to take from them the little bit that they are appreciative of you giving them. When they know you were already robbing them, you were already taking everything for yourself. But they're like, all right, go ahead, have fun. They're a more complacent person than you, and they know you can't really cope effectively with all those sorts of stressors. They got kids doing yoga, man. They had the commercial playing Woman Palada Rada. Feeling sorry for this little white suicidal children. No doubt are your children's problems. The behavior, the perceptions. People can't be themselves. That's right. That's what's wrong. See, they're not paying attention if they are the biggest fucking problem in the world. And you know what? Trump has been a great thing for us. Because he's brought it all to surface. He has done everything they wanted to do for so long. He has said everything they want to say. And they cannot come back from this. We must go forward without them for this. It's not about people's feelings anymore. It's about people having the freedom and human rights they deserve, and no white man ever coming back after 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, grooming them 40, 70 years later to try to infringe on any of human rights or anything that keeps our world so that a land man can enjoy it. Because everyone don't want to go to Mars. Everyone don't want to go to another state. Some people want to just appreciate the land in which they have and not be ran from it so someone else can come and construct on it and act as if it belongs to them now. That's the pattern. Forfeiture. Illegal forfeiture.
Yeah, that's what he's trying to do to Puerto Rico.
Oh, that's what happens to everyone that's been displaced through all these horrific situations. It's almost like an automatic forfeiture. So the new settlers come in and get to keep your shit because you completely displaced, strangely. He has something he wants to negotiate to some terms. That's why he's killing them, starving them. He is committing human crimes. Those are human crimes. If another leader was committing those crimes in another country, all white American media would be broadcasting it, and they would be condemning the leader who is doing it.
They call him a tyrant.
Okay? He is a tyrant. He is an American, a modern day, white, immigrant, American tyrant. That's Donald John Trump. I don't believe that man was even born in this country. He was born somewhere else during one of those family vacations. Certain of it. Always had my home alarm. He's just a liar. He makes up terror attacks. He'll talk about anybody being a terrorist but a white person. There was just a white terrorist attack just recently.
And do you ever notice it's never ISIS, it's ISIL. The only one that says ISIL is Obama.
He's obsessed with Obama.
It's the only one. He talks about ISIL. Everyone else says ISIS. Get a little reason because a little Puerto region. But he's the only one. Just not
did he say Puerto region?
Person. I don't know
he
if he has
really did.
of the country.
Let's replay that. See, you gotta listen to those racist, sarcastic people.
I think the whole group person. I don't know if he has the interest of the country. He probably a little reason because a little Puerto region. But he's the only one.
Oh, very racist comment. He just said a little Puerto region.
He talks about ISIL.
That's why he's doing what he's doing in Puerto Rico. He's motivated to harm them because racist. White America act as if they don't hear that. Oh, you're not a good fucking person saying that. Did he just say that?
He talks about ISIL. Everyone else is ISIS. Get a little reason because a little
This is why audios are so important.
But he's the only one.
Not in their hands because they edit them.
A good person. I don't know if he has the interest of the country. He probably does. But as I said, I think the whole group, led by the leader.
Okay, let's play it again.
Led by the leader. Is it because a little
Such a
Puerto
contradiction.
region? But he's the only one. The only one. He talks about ISIL. Everyone else is ISIS. Get a little reason because a little Puerto region. But he's the only one. Just not a good person. I don't know if he has the interest of the country. He probably does. But as I said,
probably does, he said.
The whole group.
Such a contradiction. He says one thing.
Led by the leader is grossly incompetent. That is nothing you can do about it.
You talked earlier about how
They sat here and listened to white people and clapped. He defends people.
He's the founder.
Do he know what defamation of character is? The one who's always putting a cease and desist letter down on people? You're saying that the president of the United States, the rightful president, founded a terrorist organization and white America allowed it. A culture of people sensationalized by their own greed and hatred for others. That they are so ignorant and arrogant. You can say anything to them. They will laugh and clap, applaud, chant you on. When you just said the most stupidest, racist, idiotic thing that you're going to want to deny you saying later.
He founded ISIS. You don't like it, David? I tell you, where is David going next week? Where are you going next week? To the White House. David's going to prepare the White House so that it's in good shape. So we have meetings working on ISIS.
Bedmints.
Oval Office. He's going into the Oval Office, right? And you're going to make it beautiful, right? All right, well, David's ready. So I just want to thank everybody. This has been a success from the day we built it. Really a success from the day we built it.
They built it.
People, you were here before we knew it was going to be a success. So this is 10 years. Actually, some of you are here longer than 10 years. I guess this is a 10-year for those here, 10 years or more. So how old is the exact date of the show? To stand for the president of the club. You are. Very rich, successful woman. He's a rich, success. Where is Ryan Springs, the legendary Ryan? Come here, Ryan. Come here, Ryan. Come on here. These members are loaded, Ryan. Don't listen. He will work the rope for campaign contributions.
Well, now we know why he picked him.
He just got named by Fox and everybody else as the power player of the month. I said, what about me? I won the election. So say a few words, Ron. All right, well, let's hear it for the president right now, John. You guys have been great. And David, we spent time out here on debate prep and enjoying the club. But it's just an honor to be here with the next president and the things that he's going to do to make this country great again. Get up here, Jared. Jared, get over here, Jared.
Totally.
Yeah.
I
thought I did really well in the debate show, I have to tell you.
I did. Yes, Alex?
Your question. You did not, right?
Oh my God, I was like, he's melting down. I think his head's going to explode. I thought your head was going to explode. Please, there must be a delay.
That guy has been brutal. Oh, yeah. He was, I don't know about now. He was actually, he was. Some people have, so this has completely changed. And what Liz has been changed. So what Ryan started doing about 3 months ago, he went home. He's from Michigan. And he had to when he went home. And so he changed things.
Here, I got it.
And what he said was, he said,
I know.
I'm no longer going to attack the people who support Trump. That I will basically take exception with Trump. And what he said, but I went home. I spent a couple weeks back in Michigan.
To stand for the president of the club. You are. Very rich, successful woman. He's a rich, success. Where is Ryan Springs, the legendary Ryan? Come here, Ryan. Come here, Ryan. Come on here. These members are loaded, Ryan. Don't listen. He will work the rope for campaign contributions.
Well, now we know why he picked him.
He just got named by Fox and everybody else as the power player of the month. I said, what about me? I won the election. So say a few words, Ron. All right, well, let's hear it for the president right now, John. You guys have been great. And David, we spent time out here on debate prep and enjoying the club. But it's just an honor to be here with the next president and the things that he's going to do to make this country great again. Get up here, Jared. Jared, get over here, Jared.
The investigation of the Democratic break-in thing, we're back in the problem area because the FBI is not under control because Gray doesn't exactly know how to control it. And they have, their investigation is now leading into some productive areas because they've been able to trace the money, not through the money itself, but through the bank, sources, the banker stuff, and it goes some directions we don't want it to go. Also, there have been some things like an informant came in off the street to the FBI in Miami where there's a photographer who has a friend who's a photographer who developed some films for this guy Parker. And the films had pictures of Democratic National Committee letterhead documents and things. So there's things like that that are filtering in. Mitchell came up with yesterday, and John Dean analyzed very carefully last night and concurs now with Mitchell's recommendation that the only way to solve this, and we're set up beautifully to do it, in that the only network that paid any attention to last night was NBC, who did a massive story on the Cuban thing and all. That the way to handle this now is for us to have Walters call Pat Gray and just say, stay the hell out of this. and he doesn't have any basis for doing it. Given this, he will then have the basis. He'll call Mark Felt in, and the two of them, and Mark Felt wants to cooperate because he's ambitious. He'll call them in and say, we've gotten the signal across the river to put the hold on this. And that'll fit rather well because the FBI agents who are working the case at this point feel that's what it is a CIA. But they're tracing the money to. Well, they've traced it to a name, but they haven't got to the guy yet. Somebody here, Kent Dahlberg, Minnesota, Kent Dahlberg, he said he gave $25,000 in Minnesota. And well, the check went directly in to this guy Parker. Maybe he's he did it. I mean, this is from the committee, or is it from Stan? Yeah, it is. It's directly traceable. There's some more through some Texas people that went to the Mexican bank, which they can also trace through the Mexican bank. They'll get their names today. And well, I mean, there's no way that I'm just thinking if they don't cooperate, what do they say? That they were approached by the Cubans, and that's what Dahlberg has to say, and the Texans too. If they will, but then we're relying on more and more people all the time. That's the problem. And they'll stop if we take this other side, and they seem to feel what they do is to get them to stop. All right, fine. And they say the only way to do that is a White House instruction, and that it's got to be to Helms and what's his name? Walters. And the proposal would be that Erwin and I call him in. All right, fine. And say, how do you call him in? I mean, well, we protected Helms on one hell of a lot of things. That's what everything starts. This is hunt tool. That'll cover a lot of legal net scat. There's a hell of a lot of things that we just feel that this would be very detrimental to have this thing going any further. This involves these Cubans and a lot of hanky-panky that we have nothing to do with ourselves. Well, what the hell did Mitchell know about this thing then? Was it really? I think so. I don't think he knew the details, but I think he didn't know how he handled it with Dahlberg and Texas and so forth. Well, who was the asshole that did it? Is it Liddy? Is that the fellow? He must be a little nuts. Yeah. I mean, he just isn't well screwed on, is he? Isn't that a problem? No, he was under pressure apparently to get more information, and as he got more pressure, he pushed the people harder to move harder on pressure from Mitchell, apparently. Oh, Mitchell's trying to chew in on this concern about ITP or something. Yeah. All right, fine. I understand it all. We won't second guess Mitchell and the rest. Thank God it wasn't Colson. The FBI interviewed Colson yesterday. They determined that that would be a good thing to do. To have him take an interrogation, which he did. And the FBI guys working the case had concluded that there were one or two possibilities. One, that this was a White House. They don't think there's anything about the election committee. They think it was either a White House operation that had some obscure reasons for it, non-political, or was the Cubans and the CIA. And after their interrogation of Colson yesterday, they concluded it was not White House, so they're now convinced it's a CIA thing. So the CIA turnoff would. Well, I am sure of turnoff, just like I said, that they don't want you to. You call him. Good deal. Play it, Tom. That's the way they play it. That's the way we're going to play it. Okay.